Well, hello and welcome to today's presentation, Librarians Leading the Way to AI Integration, presented by Julie Erickson, Chief Learning Officer for LanCrew Colorado. I'm Paige Bradenkamp, e-resources and school library consultant at the Wyoming State Library, and I'll be facilitating today's presentation. I've had a wonderful opportunity to work with Julie several times at conferences and through an OER professional development course for school librarians. She is a librarian and educator and is prolific in the field of educational technology. I'm so glad, although not surprised, that she has picked up the reins of AI integration and is applying all of her knowledge and experience to helping librarians adapt to this now ubiquitous tech tool. A couple of things before we get started. One, feel free to use the chat to type comments and questions. If your question isn't answered during the presentation, Julie will be happy to answer them at the end, though we will try to get to them as we go along. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel, and a link to the recording will be emailed to each person who registered for this webinar. And with that, I'll turn it over to Julie Erickson to introduce herself and to guide us on this journey into artificial intelligence and our libraries.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige, so much. It's just so good to be here. I have gotten to work with a number of Wyoming librarians through conferences, and Paige mentioned the grant. And so it's really exciting to be back. And I'm also really excited to talk about AI because I just love new technology. And AI is like the internet again. And so I remember when the internet came out in the library and how life-changing that was. This is equally life-changing. So here you go. Here are the resources for today. So you can go ahead and hop in those and grab what you're looking for. And so let's see. And I am quick sharing those. I have to tell you, my screen sharing is weird right now. So hold on, let me stop that. It's like I've never done a webinar before, but I know I've done a million of them. So, all right, now I can see everything, which is what I really wanted. So there's the resources for you today. And so we will talk about all these things and really go through them in depth. But I also wanted to give you a chance to have stuff to take away because I need to go back and look at stuff. And so while we get started, I'm really curious, and I encourage you to hop on to this Menti. I want to know, how can you tell if it's AI? Because that's one of the things that I think we are so I mean, it's starting to be out there everywhere. How do you know if it's AI or not? And one of the things that we saw a lot was, like when you look at a picture, you've got 5 fingers or 6 fingers, or there's a lot of adjectives if people copy and paste. And so it's one of those things that we really you can kind of tell it's AI, but then I've also been in presentations or looked at images that have been created, and it's like, I can't tell that has been created by AI or not. And so it's really an interesting time. So as we go through, we're going to talk a little bit about, what is AI? And so AI is the resources that they're basically things that AI can generate, do tasks and generate information that requires that human touch or that human intelligence. However, it doesn't take into account, it doesn't have emotion. And so if you say, like when you ask those kinds of questions, like, what did you feel about this? Like this character in the book, it's not going to be able to respond to that. Another drawback with AI is it is not really great with math. And so I was speaking with another librarian yesterday, and she said, she was talking about her son, and he's in a technical school, and she's like, he doesn't use AI at all because it just doesn't work for him. It doesn't provide the level of information that he needs, and it's like fascinating to kind of see that. So when we talk about components of AI, there's a lot of different things that are thrown around out there. And so you will hear when you go out and, look at things, we hear about, generative AI, but you also talk about machine learning and natural language and computer vision, and it's really overwhelming. And so I'm going to give you some resources and we'll talk a little bit about where you can kind of shore up your knowledge and also learn more about what is out there. So let's go ahead and hop in to my favorite stuff here. So one of the things that you can do, so how do you learn more? And one of the things that I've really liked is I loved this code.org AI resource. And so let's go ahead and pop into it for you. Okay. And one of the things that I love about this is it gives us the capability to utilize AI you can use it as an example, your learners can explore it. And so let me show you this page real quick. And so what we're looking at right now is a code.org lesson, and they have a whole series on AI. Have any of you utilized those? One of the things with this is we can go through and determine if this is a fish, and we can train our our AI. And that is how AI is trained, is by lots of data, and then somebody comes back and looks at it and looks at the responses and says, yes, this is good, no, this is not, type of thing. And so if I say that was a fish, this is not a fish, this is not a fish, this is not a fish, not a fish, not a fish, okay, great. We have a little tidbit. And then once we get to this one, we say fish, 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 fish. And I'm going to say continue, just so you can see our next steps. So now we want to know if AI knows what a fish looks like. And so it's going to analyze an object and then label them based on our training. So here we go. So it did pretty good, actually. And but you saw it told a couple of fishes that they weren't fishes. Like that one wasn't a fish. So we know that we're going to have to go back and do some more training. And so, ugh. And Molly, I'm sorry, that is so frustrating that they are, blasé about it. And I'm wondering is if, like when utilizing something like this is maybe we are bringing in those library concepts, not so much the computer science concepts, But this is pretty easy. We can all say, is it a fish or not a fish, for this example, and then be able to come back and say, this is how the AI is trained. And so you can see if you don't do enough examples, if you don't aren't specific enough, it's not going to work. And so kind of throw it in that really relevant time rather than, necessarily as a computer science kind of thing. Um, oh, that is so frustrating because I love this resource. I mean, for all of us, because it's one of those things that it makes it really understandable that, AI, because when we think about, oh, what data was this AI trained on? And then we think about what resources, there's a lot there that we have to process. And so this is really a simplified way. And so I, I have some more resources I will show you later. Maybe they'll like that better. But anyways, so carrying on. So both Google and Microsoft have courses that you can take also to learn more about AI. And so this can be something that, for your background, basically. So another thing that I think about a lot is how much AI has been in our lives. And so, the generative AI, ChatGPT, launched in 2022. And so it's like, oh, it's been here for a couple years. But no, really, it's been here for a really long time. And so if we look at things like our spelling and sentence suggestions in Microsoft and Google, along with the grammar and all that you get, grammar suggestions, that's AI. When we're on Amazon or Google or Target or any of those things that, it's like, you've bought this before. Would you like to buy this? That's AI. And then finally, and I went to a seminar last week about AI in business, and one of the things that they talked about was voice typing. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's AI. And just how much it's improved over time. And I'm really curious, and you can do a thumbs up or you can use one of the emojis. I want to know how many of you use voice typing right now or encourage it with your students. So got a few thumbs up and no. And so I'm going to tell you, I avoided voice typing for a really long time. And then my kids, they'd walk around talking in their phones to send texts or whatever. And I started using it on my phone. But you can use it in Microsoft, you can use it in Google. You can talk 3 times faster than you can type. And so it's a huge time saving. Not only that, but it's also a really great accessibility feature. And so if you're thinking about your learners who maybe have a struggle with typing or with writing, maybe they can answer questions. I'll give you some resources that talk about those statistics. Because when I heard the statistics, I was like, really? And then I actually dove in and did some research because I'm a librarian, and it was fascinating. So, but voice typing is another thing that utilized AI extensively. And so those are those kinds of things that I think as we go along, we really, kind of want to, we've been using AI. It's not like it's brand new. So let's talk about our standards. And so we're going to kind of run through and look at, Pam, that's a really great question. Should we not teach kids to keyboard? I think we still need to keyboard. There's value in knowing how to type. However, it's that being able to, you may have learners that can speak, whereas they they can't type very well. Others are like Holly, you noted, it is how to communicate effectively orally. And so that is one of the resources that we have to be able to, be able to do. So, I think it's kind of, I don't want to say it's up to you, but encouraging that voice typing and also using it yourself, because like I said, it's 3 times faster, which is, think about if you're spending 20 minutes writing an email or a paper right now, and you can turn around and do it in a third of the time, who wouldn't love that? So we're going to jump into our AASL standards because when they came out, I was so excited about the AASL standards, and I've loved utilizing them as we've gone through, and being able to pull in AI is just like a natural fit. So as we look at these, we're going to do, 3 different areas here for integrating AI into inquiry. And so when we think about search versus AI, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about prompt generation, and then we're also going to talk about how AI can support our research processes. And so let's kind of look at our first one here, which is search versus AI. And one of the things that I think about a lot is, I've taught search courses and how to search the internet and how to search the databases a ton. And, when we do that, one of the main things that we reiterate is you have to do your search more than once. The same thing is with generative AI. You aren't going to be able to do one prompt and be done. And so I think that is one of the things that I love, because it's the same. So you don't have to worry about changing that in your training. There's going to be lots of iterations. But some of the other things, when we think about prompting our generative AI, we get a compiled natural language result. And so that looks a lot different than a search results page, where, Google does a nice job of giving us little summaries, but, it's not anything generated, and it's not natural language. The other thing with prompting versus searching is we've done, concise prompt or concise searches forever. How can you pare down your search so that it's more concise? Now we're looking at specificity. And so you're trying to get as much information in there as you can. Um, I I love that we have the ability to revise our chat prompt conversationally. And then I also, the questions that I have are things like, are you able to evaluate the source? And we're going to talk about that when we get down to engage, but those are, kind of the things that I think about. So as you all think about, search versus AI, what are some things that come to mind for you? Yes. Oh, yes. That is, Joy said, is such a good point, because that key word, when we search, especially in our databases, it's not natural language. And so that's a good point. So let's pop on to our next slide. So, and this is where it's super fun. When do we use search versus AI? And so, when I think about this, it's like, well, I can use search to verify my information. I can use it to learn about a more specific information about a topic, and when using our subscription databases. Um, and then also, when would I want to use AI? Like, and is Joyce says, she says synthesis in AI, which may come in various drafts. Yes. And so if we want to synthesize our information, AI is perfect for that. It's also really great for analyzing data, generating questions, gathering background information. And so it's really fascinating. But as Joyce is pointing out, there's so much more than the large language models. And one of the things I was like, I wonder if our databases are starting to utilize AI. And EBSCO is, yes. I found so I asked Copilot and Bing, and it came back with, EBSCO is, and JSTOR too. And then I asked about ProQuest, and it said, we don't know about ProQuest. You'll have to do some additional looking or something like that. They were very kind, but they didn't know. But so EBSCO is incorporating things like natural language search and making natural connections and things like that, which is more like a Google than more like a Google than a standard database. Oh, Joyce, you know all the good stuff. So yes, Gail, you saw a ProQuest news release, Elsevier. So yes, there's a lot out there right now. So I think those are the kinds of things that when we think about, when do we want to use search versus AI, we really need to think about, what are we doing? And so it adds another layer to our processes, but at the same time, it's also really emphasizes how important it is that we bring in AI into our teaching because it's everywhere. How many of you noticed this week that Meta dropped in, I don't remember what's it called. What's it called? But on my Facebook this week, now there's a little circle and it'll generate things for me. And I was like, holy cow. So it's everywhere. This is llama. Yes, that's what it's called. I know it was funny. Um, Prompt generation. I like this breakdown of prompt generation, and it's from Microsoft. And um, Holly, that's a really great question. And on my resources, I do link a couple of those. And so I'll come back to that as we get back. But are the databases summarizing the answers? So I will come back to that. So the elements of a good prompt, this is from Microsoft. I really like it because it's colorful. It's also very clear. And I need not only an example, but also what it is. And so I like, that we hear, act as a helpful tutor. That's our persona. What role are we going to take? And then our objective, explain the process of photosynthesis. And so, what do we want it to do? Our audience, a 14-year-old student, a kindergartner, so who's it for? Our context, why do we need to know this? To assist with a biology exam preparation. And finally, we can set boundaries. And, who boundaries are good, people. So it should be, 300 words written in a tone that's educational and friendly. So those are the kinds of things that I appreciate, what makes a good prompt. And so I was working with a group of librarians and they had little kids, and they're like, how, they're not going to turn them loose on a large language model. So we're talking about prompts, and they were using Canvas or Canva for the classroom. And one of the things that they talked about was, they used that for image generation in Canva with the younger students. And it's like you can go back and say, let's do another iteration and search for, some other how not search, but how can we change our prompt to be more specific or to get, to change our image. And so we can bring it in at a younger age to kind of help them do that prompting. But so those are kinds of things that I really, really like. And I do give you the link to this resource in our resources. All right. So now, oh, thanks, Joyce, for dropping that in. I appreciate that. Um, so now let's go ahead and look at our including. And this is the bias in AI. And so we're going to look at both bias in AI, and we're also going to look at how we can consider bias in our prompt generation. So our first one is AI biased? And one of my favorite technology people is Dr. Tori Trust. And you have this in your resources, and it is, I just, like I said, it's one of my favorite, she's one of my favorite people, but she does a lot with technology integration. And she also dives into these topics. She put out an AI and ethics slide deck, which really covers a lot of AI that we aren't even talking about today, because it's like 109 slides or something like that. But one of the things she really encourages, engaging our learners in investigating how generative AI tools are designed. Like what data are they trained on? How was that? Why was that data selected? How will that data produce biased outputs? So I think that is something that is really important to have those conversations with our learners. And the other thing that is really important is so tell me, because we're good librarians, which prompt here is unbiased, 1 or 2? Allie, yeah. I mean, they both are going to have some bias, but when we look at the two statements, statement 2 is extremely biased because it talks about why organic food is clearly overrated and offers no advantages. Whereas option 1 is a lot more unbiased because we're looking at, summarizing the pros and cons of consuming organic food instead of conventional food. And so we're asking for, both sides of the issue. So I like this example because it's really a great way to think about, when we're doing our prompts, making sure that we don't include that bias in there. So now let's move on to the engage component of the standards. So when we're looking at this, we're thinking ethically, we're looking at data ownership and privacy, and then we're also looking at credibility checks. And I think this is one of those things that we can really shine. And one of the things that I'm hearing a lot when I'm in general trainings. Like I went to an AI talk last week, AI in business. And so this was not educators. They were talking about how do you evaluate the information that you find. And so it's like, oh, cool. This is awesome. I mean, if the general population is starting to talk about, information literacy, I mean, who doesn't want that? So let's go ahead and jump into that. Um, Ditch that textbook. Matt Miller has put out a book right away on generative AI. And as part of that, he's shared this, it's time to rethink plagiarism and cheating. And so when we look at all of these options, we have to think about what do you consider cheating? What would you use? And which one is relevant to our students' future? And so, which one of these would you consider cheating? And I should have dropped numbers in on them here. Give me a second, and I'll drop in a couple numbers. I added some numbers. So there's numbers off to the left there of the things. So in the chat, tell me, what do you think is cheating when using AI? Oh, good. You can. Oh, Joyce, yes. It does depend on the assessment. It truly does. And it also depends on what you as an educator have asked for. And so I think when we're looking at this, it's if the student plugged it into the prompt, copied the response, and submitted it to the teacher, I consider that cheating, unless we have asked you to, write a prompt. And then I would probably also ask for the prompt to see, how good our prompt generation is. Um, and but I think this is one of those things that you really want to keep in mind, because as we're looking at all of these resources, we need to think about, are we the only place that our learner is going to have access to AI? And so when we think about that, I think that is really a critical component. And so definitely keep that in mind as you are going through. So one of the things that we also need to think about when we're looking at the ethics component of everything is, who owns the data and what are they doing with it? And so when you go out there and you look at all of the different AI resources out there, and how they're set up, we really need to look at what's happening to your data. Microsoft really promotes how, if you're using Copilot, that your data is protected and your data is not being used to train the system. Joyce noted that Claude is more private. Claude AI is more private. So but there's going to be different levels. And so I think that is something that we want to make sure that we are considering as we are, utilizing AI, and what the information is that you're using. And I'll show you that Microsoft has a decent lesson that you can use, and I'll show you that when we get down to resources for students on what to think about when you're using AI. And so those are a couple things. And then finally, we get to my favorite part, which is that how do we evaluate the information that we're finding or that's being generated for us? And this is where, it doesn't deviate a lot from what we are typically, talking about in our information literacy and evaluating information, which is awesome. How many of you guys use the SIFT method, or if you don't, what is one of your methods that you use? Oh, crap is so much fun. I really liked SIFT a lot better. It's less letters to remember. Yeah, so I really like SIFT. Yes, I know, but I like SIFT because I can remember it. But I also really like yes, as Joyce pointed out, you have to leave the document that you're in. And so we are lateral reading. We are, going out and looking for other sources that confirm the information that we found. I do appreciate Copilot because it gives you the citations, generally of what it's generated for you. So that is nice. But a lot of times when we're looking at generative AI, we do not necessarily get the sources, and we can ask for the sources, but you will read a lot that sometimes AI will imagine sources for you. Or I was talking with a librarian recently who said, yeah, I asked for the sources, and when you clicked on the links, it was just a dead link. And so, kind of things to keep in mind there. But so SIFT is a really great way to utilize looking, evaluating our generative AI. And then the last thing is we have to cite AI. And I gave the example of the MLA here, but then when you talk about APA 2, you end up with generally the same, same information that we have to drop in our sources. And so this is where, I love, I mean, how many of you have gotten I got it off of ChatGTP as a citation. It's kind of like the step above. I found it on Google. So when we're looking at that, we want to talk about the prompt. And so I really like that we're putting our prompt into our citation. The AI tool, the version of that tool, the name of the company that made the tool, the date it was generated, and the general URL. So it really helps making you be able to have access to that information. And so when we talk about citing AI, there's resources for that already, as there should be. I mean, AI isn't brand new, but it is one of the things that we can definitely incorporate. All right, so I think that is all. Yes. So if we pop in, I want to know, what AI tools are you using? So go ahead and drop in the chat. What is your number one AI tool? And I know, I mean, there's lots of tools for lots of different things, but the one that you like the best. Lots of ChatGTP, Magic School, Elicit. Joyce, you also mentioned Diffit, which is a good one, and Claude, Presto. I really like I've been using Copilot a lot because I did a lot of training on Microsoft this summer, and was bringing in Copilot, as part of, we did kind of like an Office 365, what you have access to, and Copilot was a nice guided, and it's also kind of like Magic School AI too, is you get a lot of guided prompts to help you with that prompt development. And so if you're not feeling confident with prompt development, that can be a really, really powerful tool. Joyce, did you give us a whole listing of resources? I love it. Oh, good. Good. So Joyce in the chat just shared generative AI tools, a petting zoo. So yay. Thanks, Joyce, for sharing that. So now we're going to get to the fun stuff. In the chat, I want to know, and this was all part of my Menti, which is obviously not working. In the chat, I want to know, how many of your schools have an AI policy? And so this is one, okay. Oh, Allie, good job. I'm glad it's on your list. Of course, I know our lists are crazy long. I really encourage you to reach out. Oh, Paige, I'm really glad to hear that. And I know Utah Utah, Nevada. One of those states just released one too, and I'll add it to the resources. I just saw it today. Teachai.org has a toolkit for utilizing, creating your policy. And so I really, librarians need to be at the table for these discussions because it isn't just the technology aspect of it, it's the what we do with it. And what we do with it is what librarians do. And so if you can be at the table, I think that is a really big part of it. You also really want to consider that equitable access because if we don't have it in the schools, we are going to have, it's going to widen the digital divide even more because that there are students who don't have access to technology at home. And then one of the things that I also really appreciate is being able to have a rubric to evaluate. And so this is, oh, thank you. So Joyce just shared navigating AI education and AI policy trends from Pedagogue AI. And in your resources, I do have a couple like syllabi policies for generative AI from John Sowash. So you have that. And then I also shared a rubric for evaluating AI because I think as librarians, that is one of the things that we also really shine at is being able to do that evaluation and you know you know give our teachers and leaders the resources that are most suited for what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and chat really briefly about the learning resources. And so I am going to share my resources so I can just hop into the stuff much more easily. So in our resources, if you go all the way down to the bottom, we talk a little bit about a few different AI, but I will be adding in Joyce's petting zoo because it's way more fun than mine. But I wanted to, I mentioned the Microsoft resources. And so they have unlock generative AI safely and responsibly. And in this resources, they have a lot of content, but one of the things that they have is they've broken it down. They have their intro, they have Gina's Fight for the Ocean, they have a Game On with Alex, and then key takeaways. They have not only the teacher's guide, but they also have this is where our elements of a good prompt can come from. But we also have our classroom toolkit. So let me see if I can get that to pop open here. And this is really one of the more engaging, and I don't know, who knows? I may be out of touch because I could classify fish all day long. So we don't necessarily know. But when we go through this, we can really, there's a lot of information and interactive information here. And so as we roll through, it gives us some applications, but then as we also do this, here we're learning about, searching versus prompting. We're learning about come on, the different things that we, utilize with large language models. And there are some interactive components where you can pick, like what Gina should do in this case. Here we're using Copilot to compose. And so here we have our information. Here's our draft, and so you can kind of utilize that to help guide through that discussion. There's also the daily raise here where it's for middle school and there's some interactives. Eric Kurtz has curated a bunch, and then there's some AI challenges from AI EDU, which are kind of fun. So if you're looking for that information to be able to, can you prove you're smarter than ChatGPT? Can you figure out how Instagram ranks your posts? And so there are some challenges that you can utilize to kind of help have those discussions. So I talked a little bit earlier about how can you, as an educator, up your game. Microsoft has a pathway called AI for Education, and while it is about Microsoft content, it is also generic enough that you can, utilize that information, just in general. And then Google dropped a generative AI learning path, about a month ago also. And so that's pretty new. And then today, there is this brand new Elevate Your Instruction with 12 new AI tools in Microsoft. And I added that here just because it kind of shows the different resources that we have access to be able to incorporate AI, because you may be using AI and not even know about it. So let's go back to our PowerPoint and we will wrap up because we're almost done. So I shared with you the learning resources, and so you have the resources for educators. You also have resources for learners, and then finally, thinking about that collaborative opportunities. And so, as we wrap this up today, what kind of questions do you have, and what are you wondering? Oh, Joyce, I'm glad you mentioned the reading coaches and progress. I love the PowerPoint, the presenter coach in PowerPoint. It is so awesome. Um, I mean, I use it personally for different things. But I also, I shared it with a colleague who teaches at a community college. She teaches speech, and she's just like, it's wonderful because her students are, culturally, they don't necessarily, they're reserved. And so having that ability to practice without a judgmental audience is really, really powerful. I also really love Reading Coach. That's pretty cool. Search Coach, all the coaches. So questions, comments, thoughts as we wrap up. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about AI. I love to talk about all the technology and how librarians can really lead the way. And so good luck as you progress. I hope there's resources here that you can utilize, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Julie, for being here, and thank everyone else for attending this webinar. Reminder, I will be sending out a recording link to everyone who has registered, and it will be available to anybody who wants to hop on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel, and the links will be included as well.